Hello everyone. In this video we're going to be talking about checks and checkmates. Alright, so checks is whenever you put you attack the king, with a piece, and then they can still escape. Alright, and what is checkmate? Checkmate refers to when actually the meaning of that, the original meaning was putting the king under arrest, because you cannot actually capture or take the king. You have to put the king in a situation where the king cannot have any legal moves, but it's also under check. It's been attacked, but they cannot escape. That will be checkmate. All right, putting the king under arrest. So how can checks help us in chess? So checks help us because sometimes we are able to obtain like material advantage, or force the king in like more compromising situations. Weaker positions for them, and just give us a good advantage to be able to win the game and convert the advantage. All right, so in this position, for example, we have a check. If we're able to see the movement of the knight, we for when it comes to exercises like this, we want to have a little checklist of, it's like a list of 3 items that we always go over every time to evaluate the position. So we can think of any checks, any captures, and any attacks. All right, so the first thing in the checklist, any checks in this position. Do we have any checks in this position? We do. We have a couple, so we can think there's a check. There's a check with the knight here. If I were to move the knight here, there's a check, but then they can just capture us back. So was that check useful? Not really, right? We can give some checks to the king, but then we just lost the knight for no reason. So what's another good check that we have in this position? We have another check. We don't have anything by the queen, but we have another check by the knight, right? So that's in our checklist, first checks. Is this check good though? We need to think about it, because the checks are very forceful moves, and we should always look into the forceful moves first, right? So in this position, we give a check to the king. The king comes to attack our knight, but then we can just capture the queen. All right, so in this position, the check was very nice to be able to give us an advantage, and in this case, a piece advantage, right? So we were able to capture their strongest piece, and we should be able to convert this position. All right, okay, we move into the next one. Okay, so we can always look into checks, like we were saying, our checklist. We go into like checks first. Do we have any checks in this position? We do have a check. We have a check here. Sorry, we have a check here. We can just capture this piece here, but then they can just capture us back, right? So did that do anything to us? We lost the game, right? Probably, but that's not super useful. Do we have any other checks? Sometimes it's a little bit hard to see, but we have this one, but then we also have, remember that it moves like a diagonal, like a bishop. Is that checking any good? It is, right? Because the king right now is blocked by is well protected, blocked by his pawns, but also there's no escape route for the king if you were to give some sort of check here, right? So if the queen comes here and finds queen h8 check, then there's no other legal moves for the king, so they have to just go ahead and give away their piece because there's nothing else to do. And then the king doesn't have any escape. The queen is putting the king under arrest, and that's a checkmate. All right, perfect. Let's move to the next one. Okay, in this position, it's white to move, and then we were able to spot any checks. Okay, let's go for our checklist again. Any checks? It's not just checks that we have to have the position open, but sometimes it comes with a capture, right? And then we can, and if we go through our checklist, we don't see any checks right now in this position. We're like, oh, I don't know, I don't see any checks because like the rook is blocking, right? We can think about it like that. Then move to the next one, right? Any captures? What piece in this position can capture anything? The queen can look here, but then also can capture the pawn. And actually, this capture comes with a check, So if we're able to see past that, like right away, it's like, oh, the checks can also come with a capture, then that's the way to do it, right? So in this position, we have queen capture b7 checkmate, because the king is not able to escape anywhere here. The king is trapped. King is under arrest. All right. Next one. In this position, black is about to give you a checkmate, right? On g2, but it's white to move right now. All right. So some checks, let's see, do we have any checks, any useful checks? Let's see, if we look at here, a7, if we were to capture here, the king can just capture, and that check didn't do anything, right? So it's not super useful. So it's better to usually draw our arrows or think in our head, not just make the move and then like ask our opponents to like, you know, like bring the pieces back. That's not how it works. So we should think first in our head, like, does this work? And then you can try to see the continuation. They can just capture back. And then we're scared sometimes of like just sacrificing our strong piece, right? But in this position, if we think about it, there's a background problem. You know, the pawns are in front of the king. If you somehow are able to give some check in this position, remember the previous pattern, we are able to give some checkmate. So yes, in this position, we're able to sacrifice the queen on e8 check. Only forced move is for the rook to capture your queen, but then the rook was protecting the queen. And then there's a background problem. The king is under arrest. Is that checkmate? All right, let's move to the last one. So here, not all the checks or things have to be checkmates right away, right? For you to win instantly. But sometimes it's to give you an advantage somehow. All right, so in this position, do we have any checks? And we're calculating, right? If we have like this check here by the knight, there's one check because it like attacks the king, right? They're just able to capture back with the pawn like this, right? But what about this pawn, right? We're able to give a check to the king because the queen is also protecting this square. You know, if the queen wasn't protecting that square, if the queen wasn't here, if we just capture it, they can just capture us back, right? Here. But because the queen is defending that square, we're able to give a check. In this position, if they were to capture here, we just capture back, and then we're giving some big threats of attacking the king, the knight, sorry, about to capture the knight, but also about to give checkmate. You know, if they try to like give some breathing room for their king, we can just capture the knight back, and then, or find just better continuations, right? But in this case, we can just do this and then try to promote our pawn. But you can say like, what if they don't do anything about it, right? Sometimes we can find beautiful checkmates in this position like this, like only move if they don't want to just capture the rook and lose like that. Some opponents will try to play on and delay the inevitable. All right, so here we have a crazy tactic and also pattern, which is called the smother mate, which is in this position, we can give a discovered check by the knight because the knight is giving check, but also the queen is giving check. So it's not that they can do something about the queen because the knight is also giving a check. So they have to react to both things. I mean, at the same time, you cannot do it, right? So in this case, the king is the only thing that is able to move, right? So the king moves here. And you were thinking, right? Like, why cannot just capture the knight here? Is because the queen is also giving a check, right? So that's why the king just moves away. And then we are able to just sacrifice our queen. And you can think like, why no, the king can just capture? It can't because the knight is covering this square. So whenever the piece is covering another square and defending this square, the king cannot capture anything. The other pieces would have to capture it like that. So in this case, the rook would have to take, but then you can give a beautiful checkmate with the smother mate, smothering the king, being blocked by its own pieces. So sometimes the checks and checkmates can be beautiful like this. All right, I'll see you in the next video.